Okay, so without further delay, let's get started. I'm really excited to introduce Joe Diaz. As some of you may be aware, Joe is the grand winner of our 2011 CorelDRAW International Design Contest. With his artwork called Steampunk Stella, Joe has over 10 years of design experience and has lived the design life since he was very young. His family has run Diaz Sign Art since he was a child. Joe began by sweeping the shop floors, and then his parents started teaching him how to lay out signs. Before long, Joe was creating simple layouts, and by high school, he was creating logos. To learn more about Joe, visit corel.com/CorelDrawMasters or his website, www.diazmedia.com. Joe, welcome again, and I would like to hand it over to you to get started. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks for the introduction. When I was asked to do this webinar, it was kind of a challenge to think of what should I do next. So what I wanted to do was show some people kind of my tricks and steps to do cartoon work. I'm by no means a cartoonist, but every once in a while a project comes along where a cartoon is appropriate for that project. So this is kind of what I do in order to introduce some cartooning into things like logos or t-shirt designs or anything. So what I'm going to be creating is this design here, and I will be showing you some of the steps I took along the way. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the cartoon work that's a part of this overall design. Just to kind of give you a quick little story about this project. I'm a part of a group called the Wall Dogs, and what we do is we travel around the country about a couple times a year, and we paint murals in small communities. And there'll be a group of, let's say, 150 to 200 mural artists and sign painters that get together, and we'll knock out about 10 to 15 murals in a weekend, so in a matter of a couple days. And this is our 20th year, and this is for the meet that's happening in Kewaunee, Illinois. Now, Kewaunee is known as the hog capital of either the country or the state. I'm not 100% sure on that, but so that's where the pig comes into play. And the dog obviously represents the Wall Dogs, and they've got paintbrushes, so they're getting ready to paint some murals. And that's the premise of the design here. So to start, let me go over to my first page. If you're new to CorelDRAW, one thing that you should definitely take advantage of is the fact that CorelDRAW has multiple page documents. So I've set this whole project up in multiple pages, and we'll kind of go through one step at a time, and I'll be switching between pages to do that. So, but that's also great for projects too, if you want to kind of organize your projects up in pages. It's very easy to use, and I definitely recommend it. So to start off, when I do this type of work, a lot of times I like to just do quick rough sketches to get started. I do all the cleanup work and the vectorizing after the fact. So my sketches aren't pretty, but they get the job done. So this is my sketch, and to get that within CorelDRAW, you simply go to File, Acquire Image, and if you have a scanner set up or hooked up to your computer, which I don't on this particular computer, this Acquire will become available. You would select that, and then depending on what brand of scanner you have, it would pull up the scan process on that scanner. And you would follow the normal steps you normally do to scan something, and when it's done doing that, it will add the scanned image to your workspace here. So this is what I ended up with. Actually, I've got it kind of transparent right now. So that kind of shows you this is where we start. So moving forward, there's a couple different things you could do. The first thing I want to show you isn't the way that I ended up doing this, but it's a good thing to know depending on the project. So I'm going to duplicate this, which is Control-D, and I'm going to move that off the side because I may need this later. So the first thing you could do is select your scanned image, your bitmap, go up to Bitmaps, go to Image Adjustment Lab, and in your Image Adjustment Lab, what you can do is kind of edit your contrast and your brightness. And you could even drop your saturation, which is essentially your color, all the way down, because all I really need is a black and white image. And what I'm basically doing is getting these lines real dark, and by adjusting the contrast, I can slowly get these sketch marks to kind of disappear, because I don't want to end up using those. So that's close enough. And once you're happy with the way it looks, you go ahead and hit OK. And we're left with that. Now, what I'm about to show you works out a little bit better if this sketch would have been maybe done in ink or marker, where the lines are a little bit cleaner. So your process could be you create a sketch by hand, and then you do an overlay of that, do it in ink and marker, and get it a little bit cleaner than what I have here. And this process would probably work a lot better. So. But like I said, this isn't the process I ended up using. This is just kind of, for your knowledge, something that you could do. So with this bitmap selected, you hit Trace Bitmap, and I like to go to Outline Trace and Line Art. And this pulls up Power Trace, which is an awesome feature of CorelDRAW. What I'm going to do now is use my zoom in because I want to get into some of this detail here. And as you can see, that's a little rough right now, but no worries. You can kind of clean that up to a certain extent by increasing the detail sometimes helps, and then increasing the smoothing also helps. So sometimes you can overdo it though, because I got rid of his elbow there and I kind of want it in there. So corner smoothness helps sometimes. So you just kind of have to play with it and get it to a point where it's starting to look a little bit nicer. Another tip would be to go into colors, and instead of doing RGB, if you go to black and white, it takes your color range down to 2 colors. You have your black and your white. And even then, if you go back over to settings, what I like to do is remove all the white and just leave our black. So I would hit Specify Color. I would use our ink dropper here and select this white color. And then I would hit Remove Color from Entire Image. And so that's going to get rid of all the white, and we're left with just the black. Now you might want to leave Delete Original Image checked or unchecked if you want to keep that original image just in case you want to go back to it. Since I duplicated this earlier on in this presentation, I'm just going to leave it checked. And when I'm ready, I'm going to hit OK. And so what we have here is a vector. So if I go into wireframe, you can see it's all vector. And it's a tracing of my cartoon. Now, here again, this would have turned out much better if it were an ink and marker sketch. But in this case, I didn't do it that way. But if you did, this would be a good process, a very quick process of creating your outline artwork to do this cartoon. So I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to show you what I actually did. So, starting with the sketch here, what I like to do is either go up into the Image Adjustment Lab and kind of lighten this up like I showed you before, or go to your transparency tool here, and if you select Uniform, by default it's going to hit us in the 50 range, and that's fine for this case. what I'm essentially wanting to do is kind of create a very, I'm going to work over top of this, so I don't want those dark lines to compete with the new lines that I'm going to create. So once you get there, you want to right-click on this image and select Lock Object. And what that does is that allows me to create shapes and draw graphics over top of this. But I can't select this image behind here. So if that weren't locked and I were trying to select these, I would be grabbing this background image instead. So now that it's locked, I can't move that. So moving on, I like to really use this freehand tool. It's probably my favorite tool for doing this type of work. But there's other tools that I will show you here in a minute that will do similar things. The nice thing about the freehand tool is if you, and I've gone over this in other webinars before, but I feel it's important to kind of keep bringing it up because it's a great tool, and just in case you haven't seen those other webinars. So if we click and hold down the mouse button and just kind of draw something out, the freehand tool will follow the path that you took. Now, you'll notice it kind of tried to smooth that stuff out. To control that, you can go up here. So the higher that number is, the smoother it's going to make those lines. The lower the number is, the more accurate it's going to be. It's going to follow your movement. So if I go like this with it lower number, you can see there's a lot more to it. My suggestion is if you're using a mouse, you might want to have that cranked up a little bit. However, if you're using a tablet, sometimes it's nice to kind of have it in the high 20s, 30 range. So I'm using a mouse today, so I'm going to keep it kind of high, in the 89 range. The other great thing about the freehand tool, without switching out to another tool, you can simply click once and pull your mouse out to another place on the screen, and then click again, and that has created a straight line. So what I like to do when I do these types of projects is kind of create these straight lines and rough out the illustration that I'm creating. Then what I do is I go to the shape tool here, I select that, and if you right click on anywhere on this line here, you have several options that become available. These options are also available up here, but sometimes I like to just get to them quickly by right clicking. Then I would select something like to curve, and by clicking with my left mouse button, I can now turn that into a nice curve. Now, in this shape tool, you can also double click on lines, and it will add a new node. And so now you can manipulate this line even further now that we have that node. So here again, to curve. And you can also delete nodes. You can delete nodes by selecting them and hitting delete. You can delete nodes by double clicking on them. Or you can delete nodes by going up here. So it does the same thing. Here again, right-clicking to curve, and then left-clicking to pull it out. And everybody has a different process. This is a process I really like to do. I'm pretty quick at it now. I'm slowing it down a little bit just to show you guys. But if you get used to coming up with a method of your own, I definitely recommend sticking with that. The other thing is, let's say we've got, let me let's see here. Where's a good place I can do that? Okay, so let's say we click here once, here again, and there again. Now, let's say I know I want all of these to be curves. What you can do is select your shape tool, select the whole entire shape, and then go up here to convert to curves instead of right-clicking on each line individually. And what that does is that avoids using that right-click option, and it just converts everything to curves. And so now we can go like that. So it's just another way of using that. One more shape tool slash freehand tool trick. Let's say we've created this pocket here on the pig's overalls, and let's say I connected that line. But then I decided, well, I don't want to really connect that. I want to leave that open. What you can actually do is select one of these nodes and go up to this tool here and hit Break Curve. And what that does is that separates that so that it's no longer a closed shape, and it's now an open shape. And then I can double-click to delete that node. Now, in the same kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum, you can grab this shape here, and let's say I want to close this. By using the shape tool, if I select this tool here, Close Curve, it will automatically close that for me. So that's something to keep in mind. Other tools you can use to do kind of the similar thing, like I said, freehand tool, if I were to click and drag, I can create lines this way too, which is a little quicker, but sometimes not as accurate. So just depends on, in a cartoon's case, you can definitely get away with this. But if you're doing, precise logo work, maybe not. I know a lot of people really like this Bezier tool, and I can show you that real quick. By clicking once, and then clicking again, and holding down, you can kind of create your curves as you go. So I know a lot of people that prefer using that. It's not really my cup of tea, but it's an awesome tool nonetheless. So what I'm going to do is skip ahead, and let's pretend that we've basically created the simple line work of this entire pig here. This line is a little too thin for a cartoon, so this next step will show you how to remedy that. I would select the entire pig, and there's a couple different things we can do. The first thing we could do is select the Outline Pen tool, and let's go up into Outline Pen. And from here we can do all sorts of different things. We can change the width of the pen stroke. For cartoons, I like to round out the edges here, or the ends of the lines. So you can do the similar thing with corners. Now another thing is, usually cartoons, like real hand-drawn cartoons, aren't precise. So depending on how the pen touches the paper, the line might be thicker or thinner. So you could actually kind of create your own little calligraphy-like nib for a cartoon, and it kind of gives it a more of an authentic feel. So you could do that, and we'll hit OK. And let's make it a little bit thicker. Let's go to, oops, I already did that. So there's 4 point, and you can see what I was talking about with that nib. You can see this line is a little thinner than this thicker line here. So that's one way you could kind of create the outline that you're going for. Then, of course, when you're happy with what you've created, you would select this whole entire thing, and you would go to Arrange and then Convert Outlines to Object. And that will basically I'll show you. If we go into wireframe, you can see these are still just thin lines. They only look this way because of the effect that we gave it. However, when it's all said and done, I want this to be a complete vector shape. I want the line to actually be, you know, where my mouse is running right now. So let's go to Arrange. Actually, I'll do it in wireframe so you can see it firsthand. So Arrange, Convert Outline to Object. And there you go. You can see that's. And then you would go through and you would weld all this stuff together. And to weld things is pretty simple. You select the shapes that you want to weld together. And so in this case, this part of his ear and this part of his cheek, I hold down Shift to select both of them. And then I would hit Weld. And as you can see, now it's one complete shape. So that is one way to create line thickness on a cartoon. I'm going to undo and go back a few steps, get back to our simple hairline lines here. The other thing you could do is select your entire cartoon and let's see here, under where your freehand tool and your Bezier tool is, there's an option called Artistic Media. If you were to select that, you've got all these different types of lines on here that are by default, and you can actually add your own if you wanted to. But what I'm going to do is select one that I actually like a lot, which is this one here. And here again, we'll give it a more of an authentic look and feel, because usually when you write with pen, when you first press down, it's kind of thin, and then you can create thicker lines as you go. So we'll select all this and go back to that tool, and we can change the stroke width to kind of see how it will look and get ourselves in the ballpark. So I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to hit, once we're done, I'm just going to unselect everything. And it's close, this stuff is a little thin here, and the nice thing about converting this to vectors, we can go in and clean that stuff up as we go. So to do that, select the entire cartoon again, and go up to Arrange, and then in this case you want to hit Break Object Selected Apart. And if we go into wireframe, you'll notice that I've got the original lines here, but now I've got these new lines that I created here as well. And so what you would want to do is go in and delete these original lines, because we wouldn't need those anymore. And you'll notice when I did that, this and this kind of filled in. And the reason it did that is because these were closed shapes, as opposed, so basically, to give you an example, this is an open shape. This line isn't connected to that line. This is a closed shape. So let me show you again. It's an open shape. I can assign it color, fill color, and it won't do anything. It actually has fill color. It says it does down here, but it's not showing it. It actually won't show fill until you close that shape. So I close it. There you go. There's your fill. And so that's why those turn black. And we're deleting this anyway. So as you can see, those are no longer filled in. Problem solved. So you kind of go through and you delete these lines as you go. And like I said, now that this is a vector shape, we can go in and kind of clean some of this stuff up. So let's say, for instance, I don't want that to be as thin there. I can add some extra nodes. and kind of work my way around the cartoon until I get it just the way I want it. Now if I go into wireframe and let's say looking at these teeth, I kind of don't like those points like that. What you can do is combine both methods. You could we can delete our new shapes that we created and select our lines. Oops. So select the cartoon there. And go into Enhance. And go to our outline tool, our outline pen tool like we did earlier, and round those off. And using a combination of both methods, we can eventually create a cartoon that we're happy with. So I'm going to skip ahead. And here's what I ended up with. I eventually ended up creating, turning this vector shape into a blue color because that's how the project's going to end up looking. But as you can see, we've got nice thick and thin lines. One thing you could do at this point is select this entire shape and break it apart. And by holding down Shift and selecting this very outside edge here, what I've done is I've selected everything else but this outside line. So you can see I'm using my arrow keys to move it. You can see this outside line's not moving because I don't have that selected anymore. So what we do is we'll go back into Enhance mode, and I will hit Shift Page Up. And what that does is that brings all those shapes I have selected to the foreground and leaves that outside line towards the back. So at this point in time, we're thinking almost like layers of construction paper, and we're gluing stuff together. So we're putting those shapes on top of the original shape. And then we can assign it just a random color. I'll make it a light gray. So now we can kind of see what we're doing. So here again. Now, what you would want to do from here on is kind of combine things together. So if I select this shape and I hit Combine, now I've got, if we had a background here, we've closed that shape there. But now I can actually go in and start assigning colors. And you might also have to, might help if you select all of the gray here and give it a black outline. So here's a cool little trick. If you select your shapes that you want to assign an outline to, if it's just a hairline outline, it doesn't matter how thick it is, and you go over to your color palette, and if you right click on any color you want, so in this case I want to make my outlines black, it will assign a black outline. Might have been hard to hear. You'll see up here in the eyebrow. It'll assign a black outline or a green outline or a brown outline, any color you want to that shape. So there again, all I'm doing is hitting the right mouse button when I'm selecting the color palette instead of the left mouse button. So that was kind of a cool trick that someone showed me once. Here again, I know there's some other stuff going on here, so if I go into wireframe, I can see I've got a pocket, I've got all sorts of stuff going on here that I'm not seeing right now. And you could do a couple different things. You could remove the fill to see it, or in my case, I'm going to make it a different color for the time being. And then I'm going to hit Page Down. Oops. And get to a point where I can see these other shapes that I want. And then what I might do is select this shape and hit trim, and this shape, and then I could hit combine here. So you could do a number of different things to kind of get this all put together. And so what you have is your new shape, and then you can break that apart again. Oops, I'm sorry. And then we can start assigning colors to different parts of the body. So I'd want his arms to be pink. I would want that to be pink. And you just kind of go around and add color as you go. And when it's all said and done, you would end up with something like this. Now, you could see I added some shading in here, and I'll show you how to do that here right now. To do that, so in this case, we'll ungroup all this because it's all grouped together. I would have ended up with something like this. And just here again, using your freehand tool and a little bit of creativity, you kind of go in here and create a new shape there. Now, really I'm only interested in these lines here. And that's why this out here is so rough. I'll explain that in a second. So I get this kind of the way I want it. And you got to kind of think like an illustrator. You have to kind of assume that the light's hitting here and we would have a shadow here. So we would get it right about there where it looks good. Then if you select this shape and this pink shape here, and if we were to go up to intersect, what I've done is I've created a new shape that was an intersect of both of these shapes. And then I can assign that a new color. And as you can see, we've got some stuff here that we don't want to do that with. Oops. And if you got a color that you like that you've been using for your shading, just to keep things consistent, you can use your eyedropper tool, which is right here. And if you click down on this arrow, you got two different options. You have the attributes or the color eyedropper. In this case, I don't want to copy all the effects. I just want to copy a specific color. So I'm going to select that and select that. And here again, we could create, using the freehand tool, some nice shading. Oops, didn't mean to delete that. Get it kind of how you like it. Then select this shape and your pink here, and you would hit intersect. And we'll just assign it a random color for now. And then we can use our eyedropper tool to change it. So that kind of handles the shading, but pigs kind of look, I want this pig to kind of look glossy, so I'd also create some kind of lighting effects here too. And that's just a simple case of creating shapes. They don't have to be right up next to anything, but you could just kind of create a shape like that, move it where you need it, and then using your eyedropper tool, click once, and click again. Now here's a good example of when you might want to use this feature instead of this feature. So if I were to select this and select this shape, not only is it copying the fill color I want, but it's also copying the outline effect, which in this case is no outline. And when I apply it to that, it got rid of the outline for me and saved me a step. And so working through this illustration using those techniques, we've created pretty nice looking cartoon that we'll end up using for t-shirt designs, marketing, because we've got to market this event. We want lots of people to show up and be there. So we start by just creating the cartoon, and the cartoon can be used on its own, or it can also be used in addition to a logo or t-shirt designs or whatever you want. You'll also notice, if we go back to this original and then where we ended up, oops, you'll notice this outside line is really thick. And so a way you could do that, and I'll go into wireframe to show you, you can see that there's an extra line here. So if I were to delete that, that was more like what we started off with, and that kind of beefens it up a little bit. And I like doing that because it's you typically see it with cartoons, and I think what it does is it allows the cartoon to almost seem like it's happening off the page. And that's really easy to do. You can do it with any shape. You can do it with lettering even. So if we were to take this basic Arial lettering here, and if we were to go to right where our transparency tool was that I showed you earlier, there's a contour tool, and we select that, and then we can add that extra bit of weight that we need, and it's as simple as that. And let me show you that again. Actually, you can, when you have the contour tool, you can do a couple different things. You can either click this node here and manually do it, or I like to kind of use these arrows to or type in a specific measurement. If you're doing sign work, sometimes you have to be more specific, and doing it that way. And you can do things like add additional steps. So let me change the color of the lettering so we can see this. Or if you wanted to have your contour on the inside, you could do that as well. So just to kind of show you that or that. So I use the contour tool all the time. It's a great tool. And so we've got a finished cartoon. The next step would be creating the rest of the layout. And I won't waste too much time on this because the majority of this project was about the of this presentation is about how to do the cartoon work. But just to kind of explain my thought process here, usually I would start with an illustration, so in this case the cartoon. Then I'd come up with a font that kind of matches the style and look of that. And so I grabbed this font. It's called Unicorn. And the thing I really liked about it was the W kind of comes up here and wraps around, and that sort of reminded me of a pig's tail. Does the same thing here with the O, and the G's kind of, you could even say, is sort of pigtailish. Although when it was all said and done, we felt like the G wasn't quite reading as well as the G should, so we ended up not doing that, and instead our lettering ended up looking like this. So we fixed that G. We also took this part of the S off too because we felt like it wasn't necessary. There wasn't anything it was connecting to. So that's typical sign type things that I might do, for sign-like projects or layouts or things like that. The other thing is the slogan was a hog and dog heaven, and since I know I'm going to put my cartoon right here, I left a space in there to do that. And same thing with, instead of having a line go straight through like I did up here, I thought it might be cool to kind of break that line up and have it curl. And so a cool way of doing that is, here again, using your freehand tool, and then holding down your mouse button, just kind of curling around. And it doesn't have to be pretty. You can come in and clean that up by using the shape tool. But essentially, any of the scroll work that I do, a lot of times I use this process to do that. I just kind of delete nodes and move nodes around to kind of smooth things out, and eventually you have a nice looking swirl. It's a little different than what I ended up with, but just to show you. And then you go to your outline pen tool, apply some weight to it, and even go into your outline pen tool and use that as well. Or you could pull in the, Corel's got a lot of dockers, so if you go into dockers, you have a lot of tools here. Instead of me going to this outline pen tool over and over and over again, you could simply have that opened up as a docker over here and avoid that process over and over again. Part of the reason why I don't have that open is because my resolution had to be set just right to do this webinar, and I don't have a lot of room to work. So that's how you do that. And to change lettering so it kind of follows that curve, that's pretty easy. You select your text. So in this case, I've got this font. Let's say we did the Kiwani. And if you select that, if you have your pick tool and you select the shape a second time, it gives you your rotate functions, and it also gives you your skewing functions. So that's how you do that. The way I got to follow this line, I actually take a shape. So in this case, let's pretend this isn't here. And I kind of get this real close to the line, and then I select the shape again to get these rotate and skew commands, and I just go ahead and I use the line almost as a guide. And then scale it up. And there you go. That's how we do it. And then just like we did with the cartoon, we would start adding color. You can see kind of the difference. Everything's still there, but we've added some kind of shading and color. We use colors from the actual cartoon itself, so everything ties together. And really, we kept the color palette pretty low. We've got our 3 blues here, 3 shades of pink, and 3 shades of tan, and that is all we need. But for a t-shirt, that would get kind of pricey, or it could be depending on the vendor you're working with. And so to do that, I can simplify it even more. So for this actual this meet that we're doing, t-shirts is kind of a part of the deal. The wall dog artists all get t-shirts. The public gets t-shirts. It's a promotional tool. It's also a kind of a take-home keepsake for the artists. So the t-shirts are kind of a big deal. So as you can see, the challenge is to create a design that can be used on multiple color t-shirts, but using the same colors. And so really we've simplified this design down to 4 colors, well 5 actually if you count the white here. And that same design will work on tan, will work on, kind of works on green. Wouldn't be my pick, but that's something they wanted. And light gray, pink. So different color shirts. Here again, this is the the full color deal. And then lastly, you can even simplify the design, since everything's in vector and it's a possibility, to one color designs. So these would be your kind of low-end, cheaper shirts. But they still look good and the design's still there. So there's always a possibility for that. And so here's kind of a few examples of some other cartoons I've done using the same process. Pretty easygoing stuff. You know, cartoons generally look casual. They work good for kind of retro-looking brands, logos, things like that, or for T-shirts. So that would be about all I have for today. I'm ready to answer some questions, though.
Joe, great job. That was really interesting to see how you created the cartoon and got it to the final product. I appreciate you sharing that today. We do have some questions, and one of the first ones was you mentioned that you can create your own artistic pen stroke. How do you do that was one of the questions.
Ooh, that is a good one. Let me see here. And that is one that I probably don't know the answer for today, unfortunately. I did it a long time ago, but I'm just so used to using these Corel defaults. If you'll notice, you can also go into the brush tool here, and we've got some other artistic tools available. You can see up here, this is where you would actually browse for the tool or the actual stroke that you've created. But that's kind of that would kind of be a seminar in itself, because it's, you know, you have to actually create the path in CorelDRAW first, then save it as an actual stroke that you can end up using for different things. Maybe one thing we could do is track down the tutorial that I used to figure it out and post that online for you guys to check it out.
Yeah, that's a
You
good.
can see there's all sorts of different calligraphy. You can do these kind of random objects. So lots of cool stuff in here. The sprayer does some neat stuff too, just depending on the project. That might be cool for kind of a fun banner for somebody. But yeah, that's kind of a little more of a complicated. I wish I could answer that quickly for you, but I just really can't.
That's something I'll help look into for Les as well. Another question, any specific reason for using a freehand tool instead of the Bezier tool to draw?
Personal preference. Like I said, I think the main thing, because I do a lot of sign work, and that's a good question, by the way, because I know a lot of artists prefer the Bezier tool. I like using the freehand tool mainly because I can do my straight lines with it quickly. Or I can hold it down and do that type of work, all without switching tools. So there's no back and forth between tools. It just seems a little more intuitive to me to do it this way. But, you know, different strokes for different folks. I mean, literally in this case. Whatever works for you. This is just something that I've grown comfortable with over the years. Like I said, mainly because it kind of achieves two different things: the straight line work, which I actually use quite a bit for you know, sign-like projects or layouts, and then the more custom, you know, freehand effect, which is great for you know, illustration work. And I also like, you know, using the shape tool to kind of fine-tune things. Whereas the Bezier tool, it might take a little bit longer, but you're kind of, you know, doing that fine-tuning as you go. So, you know, just personal preference, I guess.
Thank you. What methods did you use to create the highlights inside the text wall dogs, contour to the inside?
Oh, okay. Um, at our shop, we call that the poor man's bevel, and I'll show you. So to start with, we've got this basic white lettering, and I select my contour tool, and let's give it a different color here. It's not quite the pink I want, but just for the sake of argument. So we get our contour down to where we want it. Once we got it to about where we want it, we would select the actual contour itself and hit break contour group apart. And so now we've got two separate shapes. Then, by hitting Control D, I duplicate this shape here, and I will pull it off to the side, and I will duplicate it again, and I'll make this blue just for now, and you can see there's still that original underneath, and we'll make this black for now. And in this case, since the light is kind of coming from this because you have a shadow here, it makes sense to have if you do it this way, where your bevel's this way, then it looks like that is sticking forward, whereas if you did it kind of the other way, it makes it look like it's recessed. So it just kind of depends on how you think it should be. So by selecting both this black and the blue and going up to trim, I've created that kind of recessed look. And you know, in this case, this would be that pink, and this could be the dark pink. And so that kind of looks like it's three-dimensional, like it's kind of sitting back in there. And we call that the poor man's bevel because it's just a real simple, quick, and easy bevel. And I don't know why we coined that term, but it's it's one that we use at the shop here. So that's how we do that.
Thank you. Another question, why did you prefer intersection instead of smart fill to create shadows?
I guess I only really use the smart fill if I've got all sorts of shapes already created, and I select the entire thing and let CorelDRAW do its job. But when I'm in the nitty-gritty and I'm just doing little parts at a time, it's just something I'm used to using. And I think it all kind of goes back to that intersection tool is available on CorelDRAW before the smart fill tool was. So I just kind of got used to doing it that way. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, if you have two intersecting shapes, you can use the smart fill tool to create a new shape. So that's a good point. I mean, it's just like I said. I think it's just something I'm used to, because I'm up there doing weld and trim and using those features anyway. I'm just kind of used to going up in there and using that anyway since I'm up there. So, but that's a good question, and that's a cool tool. It's something that's a little bit newer in CorelDRAW.
Thanks for that. Another one was, what exactly does the share attribute option in the outline pen dialog box indicate?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
What does the share attribute option in outline pen dialog box indicate? Do you know that one?
I'm trying to think what they're talking about here. Oops. Might help if I make a line first. Oh, this here? Not 100% sure. Never use it. Good question. I don't know. You stumped me. It's not one I use. That's the great thing about CorelDRAW, though. There's, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here that I've been using this program forever, And there's still some stuff that I just haven't even gotten a chance to even try out. And you get new versions that will come out every once in a while, and there'll be some new tools that show up, and every once in a while you'll be like, oh man, where did that come from? I wish that was there before. And so yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know that one. Maybe that's something we can get back to you on.
Yep, for sure. In terms of questions, there was a question about, can you please repeat once how you got the background by combining?
I think what they mean is when we talked about doing this part here. Okay, so let me show you here. Let's say, oops. So let's say this is broken apart, which is how it would start out in this case. And if I got rid of the fill and we just kind of went with an outline here, you can see this shape is still there. With the fill, you can't. So it's there, but you can't see it. So you would select both of these shapes and you would hit combine. Now, the reason why that's important is, let's say we had it over top of another shape or a background, and let's say that background is red in this case. If I were to just make that a white color, that would be fine. Or I could just make it a red color and it kind of give it the illusion that it's, cut out. But if I were to change this color, then I'd have to go in here and change this again. So if you select this shape and you go to combine, now no matter what I change this color to, it's always going to come through. So it's basically just a way of, even with lettering, if you've got, if we were to convert this to curves and break it apart, I could make this white, and I could make this white, but then when I move it over top of the yellow, that becomes a problem. So by selecting everything and hitting combine, that no longer becomes a problem. So I hope I answered that question correctly. I wasn't 100% sure what they were talking about, but I think that's what they were asking.
Thanks. One final question before we're out of time here, Joe, was just where do you increase the number for freehand tool?
Okay, so when you create a line using your freehand tool, whenever you have the freehand tool selected, so if you're in freehand tool mode, I guess you put it, you'll notice you'll have all of your options that are available for that specific tool. And that goes for almost any tools here. So if you go to zoom, you've got your zoom tools. If you've got circle, you've got your circle tools that you need. So same with freehand. If you go to freehand, your tool is going to do that. It's going to be up here, and it says freehand smoothing, and you just kind of adjust that accordingly. And that's how you get to that. You can even do things like dotted lines and all sorts of stuff. So.
No, thank you, Joe. We're running out of time here, so I really want to thank you for sharing some of your techniques today, Joe. That this has been great. I want to thank you and everyone for your time and interest in CorelDRAW Graphics Suite X6. I'd like to let you know that if you'd like more information on CorelDRAW Graphics X6 or to download the free trial version, simply visit corel.com/CorelDRAW. And just for your information, next month's webinar will be happening on Thursday, May 9th, 2013 at 12 to 1 p.m. And Suzanne Smith, CorelDRAW specialist and trainer, Suzanne Smith will provide you with techniques while working with lenses, effect brushes, and special effect filters in Corel Photo Paint X6. To register, go to corel.com/CorelDRAW-webinars. We hope you can join us, and I want to wish you all a great day. For those of you who did join and who have been asking about the recording, we have recorded this session, and we will be circulating that over the next few business days. So it will be posted on the site, and you should get an email. So thanks again, Joe. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for taking the time and watching us. Thanks.